And someone came up to me, a dear friend, Lisa Gardner, and she said, it feels like you really are internalizing this leadership thing. And I said, yeah. I said, I kind of think I got the hang of this. And she's like, no, the interim side of the leadership thing. She's like, you are the CEO. And if you're going to be in the seat, you better drive it like you stole it. And it's like something unlocked in me. And it was like, yeah, I am this. Like, yes, I have to stop asking for so much permission.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to How She Does It, where we speak with exceptional leaders making a real difference in their fields, and we ask them how they do it. I'm Karen Feinerman. I'm a longtime Wall Street investor, a mom of four, and a panelist on CNBC's Fast Money. Alexis McGill Johnson's job as CEO of Planned Parenthood requires her to be on the front lines day in and day out of one of the biggest political battles of our time. It's a job she's well equipped to handle. Her background as a professor, researcher, political organizer, and corporate consultant has helped her guide the organization as it faces some of the most pressing challenges in its history, including increased restrictions on abortion and the loss of funding from Medicare. No matter what your beliefs, it's riveting to hear how she manages a professional life in the face of constant obstacles and opposition. This was a fascinating conversation. Hope you enjoy. Alexis McGill Johnson, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So I have so much to ask you. So it is a pivotal time for Planned Parenthood. And what is it like to lead the organization at this particular time?
I mean, what a moment, right? I mean, literally, I'm talking to you just days after, the Supreme Court has now been petitioned around access to Mifepristone. Louisiana sued the FDA about getting Mifepristone through the mail. Mifepristone is one of two medications that we use for medication abortion. 2/3 of women across this country use Mifepristone for really like the gold standard of abortion care, as well as miscarriage care. And essentially, Louisiana was suing the FDA because they had put Mifepristone under review to say, like, your review's not happening fast enough. We want to end this practice altogether and essentially enact a backdoor abortion ban through the courts. That's kind of the state of play through the court. And the manufacturer appealed to the Supreme Court and said, hey, Mifepristone is safe and effective. It has been used by 7.5 million people across this country. It has been actually reviewed by peer review hundreds of times, right? Hundreds of studies. And it's been FDA-approved for 25 years. So, really, what are we doing? And so it's now in the hands of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court allowed for a stay, which means that we can continue to use it for the next 5 days. But literally within days of this conversation, we will find out whether or not we are able to get Mifepristone through the mail again, or Mifepristone can be sent to pharmacies to allow just to take the burden away from women who are getting access to medication abortion. And you think about, right, 2/3 of women who access abortion do so by medication abortion. And it just exemplifies the kind of attacks, the circular attacks, the cyclical attacks that we're under, right? We fight for freedom and then it unwinds. We fight for Roe, it unwinds through Dobbs. We fight for access to Mifepristone and then we see them unwound. There is just a consistent effort to deny us access to freedom. We've seen this attack on Mifepristone, and we've also seen at the same time abortion numbers have actually gone up. And what that tells me is that women have always been in charge of trying to figure out how to manage their pregnancy outcomes. And there have always been people who have fought us on determining our own right to control our bodies. And I'm leading Planned Parenthood. I am leading, in the women's rights movement. And I'm betting on the side of us to be able to continue to ensure that we can stay as strong and fight as hard and as long as the opposition can.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so a lot of people think of Planned Parenthood and think of abortion. That is just one piece of the mission. What else does Planned Parenthood do?
Yeah, absolutely. Planned Parenthood is the largest sexual and reproductive healthcare provider in this nation, all 50 states. We provide access to contraception, to wellness exams, to STI testing and treatment, to breast cancer screenings, to gender-affirming care, and abortion where it is legal. And we proudly do so. I do think that, a lot of people associate Planned Parenthood with abortion, even though it may be a small percentage of what we do, but we are a significant portion of the market, right? We're about 40% of the abortion market, which means we stand very firmly in providing care that we believe is essential for women's reproductive freedom.
Mm-hmm. So many aspects of your organization are under attack right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Is there any that aren't?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Look, I think to be the president of Planned Parenthood is to be certainly in the opposition's eye around, fighting against freedom. I also lead the Planned Parenthood Action Fund, which is our political advocacy organization. Mm-hmm. We have 20 million supporters. When I started in this role, we had 11 million. I like to say 20 million. That's 5 times more than the NRA. Not that I'm competitive or anything. But I think what it says is that when people feel as though their fundamental rights to bodily autonomy, their fundamental rights to self-determination, to figure out who they want to be in their own lives is under attack, that they are going to stand up, they're going to show up, they're going to march, they're going to take an action because they know how critical it is just to make it through their career, build the family that they want to build. And that's ultimately what I think Planned Parenthood stands for.
So with the crises that are going on, you also have this opportunity in that it has certainly activated a huge number of people. So how do you take that power that you have while you're also trying to navigate these attacks?
The day-to-day crises,
yes.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I think is so interesting in this moment, I was born in 1972, so maybe 5 or 6 months right before Roe V. Wade was enacted as law. And, I grew up believing that these freedoms would always be there, right? That our job was literally just to go earn it, right?
Right. That it was done. That it was
done.
Yes.
Yeah. It was I wasn't thinking about that was going to be taken away. What I'm seeing now is the number of young people, men and women, right, who are coming in and understanding this is not simply a gender rights, movement. This is a space where the ability for all of us to make decisions about if, when, and how we build families and determine what our futures are going to be is there. And I think that, to me, that is the long game, right? To ensure that we are making relevant for every single generation, including my 2 young daughters, that rights are given and rights can be taken away, and that our job is to stay vigilant and ensure that we can do that work. And at the same time, my job is also to ensure that we hold on to as much care as possible throughout this country. As I said earlier, Planned Parenthood holds about 40% of the abortion market. And I say that because it is important to understand, while it may be a small percentage of the overall services, our responsibility to ensure continuity of care in concert with the broader abortion rights movement is really important, that we stand strongly in providing that care, and we are committed to destigmatizing that. We are fighting to ensure that our clinics stay open and that our footprint stays strong, because ultimately where we are able to provide care, oftentimes places where many other healthcare providers are not. So we sit at the intersection of a very critical part of the public health infrastructure. And in a moment where literally rural hospitals are closing, that means something, that someone can come into a Planned Parenthood. 1 out of 3 women, in fact, have come to a Planned Parenthood in their lifetime, and they know they're going to get excellent quality care. That's, I think, the business that we're standing on.
Mm-hmm. So where we are right now, the debate over abortion rights has historically been heated, even violent. How do you do this work and not have it consume you?
Oh, my goodness. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't all-consuming. Mm-hmm. It is actually very consuming. I don't think many of us, particularly my generation, thought that we would be here. And I think about it now. I'm the mother of a 8th grader and 11th grader. Mm-hmm. We're on college tours. We're doing all the things. And I'm actively thinking about what it would mean for her to go to school in the South where my family lives. What would it mean for her to be in a place or to be with friends who found themselves in a situation where they could not get the care they needed in time? So even when I think my brain is off because I'm on family time, I realize it's on in all of these ways. And I think we're just in such an urgent moment, right, where we are right at the precipice of having the lack of abortion rights become normalized again, having the future of our rights becoming the status quo. And I just can't imagine what that would mean for people all across the country. Because in some ways, my daughter's going to be fine because she knows she can call me, she can call her aunties. But there are so many young people, there's so many older people now who are living in states who have fewer rights than they had 5 years ago, fewer rights, fewer doctors, because OBGYNs are no longer, many of them are no longer matching into states with bans. We are seeing a higher maternal mortality rate, and also we're seeing those with a lot of expertise around maternal care, high-risk maternal care, leaving because no one wants to be able to practice when they can't practice to the extent of their license or to be criminalized for daring to do so. And so it really is kind of all-consuming to like make sure that this moment doesn't become the norm.
We're clearly in a very divided society right now.
Yeah.
You've spoken about the corrosive nature of hate. How do you think about how you can react to that or respond?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we are in a really polarized environment on a lot of different issues. And I think the work that we have to do is not just try to bring the polars back together, the polar opposites back together and find, quote, common ground. It's about trying to find the humanity in each other, right? It is about rehumanization in the conversation. And so there was a moment with the first assassination attempt of the president and, you know, where I disagree a lot with where this president is on a lot of things, but I was really disturbed by the jokes, right, that people were saying, and I don't even want to repeat them here. There was a moment that I felt like the more you feed into the harm to the other side, even if it is like jocular in nature, the more you are feeding into your own dehumanization. And there's a choice that we have to make around what we believe and what we value and how we're going to actually hold ourselves to that standard as opposed to taking the easy road to dehumanization, because dehumanization has happened to us. And I think that's actually a lesson that we've seen over time. You know, you can look back at Jim Crow and you look back at the photos of the folks who were jeering at the little girls that were integrating, you know, in Arkansas. And you just say, like, there was something that was happening to their humanity in that moment that they could scream at little girls who were trying to get an education. And I never want to be in a space where I am laughing or creating the dehumanization of someone that I'm actually trying to build a bridge to.
So I've heard you talk about a 2040 strategy. That's sort of, you have a long game and a short game, right? Can you tell, for people who don't know what your 2040 strategy is, tell us about that and how you go about
kind of blocking and tackling. Yes. Yeah. I mean, look, the opposition had a long game, right? It started with overturning Roe. It started with Roe being enacted and then spending 50 years trying to unwind that landmark decision that granted us full autonomy over our bodies. And, you know, my position is that we have to have equally thought out a long game in terms of what our strategy is to get there. So in 2022, when the Dobbs decision came down, it was overwhelming, right? I mean, I remember exactly where I was in a board meeting, literally falling into someone's arms of like, oh my God, we thought it was going to happen. We got the leak. We thought it was happening. Yeah, it was like the leak. And then the decision came down. And just recognizing, as I said, these are, our rights are fragile, right? In a way that was not quite seen before.
Right. I know, I didn't think of it that way.
Yes, right. Yeah. So you didn't grow up thinking that this was going to be gone. And, you know, and I think what we had been seeing, right, we weren't surprised when it happened, even though it hit us emotionally, Because we had been seeing the erosion of the rights over time. We had seen the number of kind of targeted restrictions against abortion providers in many of the states that have now fully overturned abortion in their, or banned abortion in their states.
Then you saw the court change.
And so the courts change, the political change. We saw state houses change, right? So like essentially the moment that we are in right now, we are kind of locked out of structural power, right? In state houses, in courthouses, and in the federal government, right? So the question that we have is like, how do you build out a long game that takes that structural advantage that the opposition has into account? And how do you ensure that you are building power that's going to meet a new moment? You can't meet structural disadvantage with the same tactics, right? It can't just be press releases and, marches and patching calls into Congress. Those are all really important ways to advance a movement strategy, but we actually have to be thinking much longer and much harder around what it takes to change culture, what it takes to change behavior, to change the narrative so that people understand the impact directly, and then connecting the dots at every turn, taking advantage of every electoral cycle to move kind of the populace with you. What I would say is that the populace is actually with us, right? I think people think about abortion as being such a divided issue, but that's a false equivalence. The majority of people believe that reproductive freedom, those choices should be made by the people who are making them, not by politicians. And so there's no state in the union where banning abortion is popular. We're led to believe that when in fact, state after state, they've enacted these bans because the opposition has gerrymandered themselves into power. When behavior changes, when culture changes, when norms change, when destigmatization happens, it creates new conditions for policy. It creates new conditions for politicians to operate. And
what do you mean by that?
Meaning when you see, so let me go back to just the basic numbers post Dobbs, right? The Supreme Court has overturned Roe v. Wade. One would assume, with almost half of the country now having restrictive abortion bans, that abortion numbers would go down state by state. When in fact, abortion numbers have increased, right? Why is that? That is because people have gotten more access through shield laws that are protecting providers from sending medication abortion into states that have bans. We have a stronger network of navigation that is allowing patients to move from a banned state into a state to get access to care. And what that says, right, is that people who have been denied access to care have always found a way to get access to care. And that is really important because there's a fundamental fire under freedom, right, that can't be extinguished because people understand what it means to make a choice about a pregnancy outcome for not just their lives, but largely for the lives of their families, because most people who seek access to abortion are already mothers.
Okay, I didn't realize that. That's interesting.
So they know what it takes to raise a child. They understand, and they've made a decision on the family that they want to have. So if people are continuing to make the choices that they believe are important for their lives and their families, that in itself is going to create a new condition for policy to be enacted. And that's what I think is really important about this moment. It's really about how are people and communities adapting to these bans, and what are the new conditions that are going to be created to fight in each state because of them.
So are you surprised that you are the CEO of Planned Parenthood right now? How did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I have felt like an accidental CEO, right, in the sense that I came into the organization as a board member. I didn't have fighting for women's rights or reproductive rights as part of my portfolio of work, really.
Tell us about your work before this and before you were on the board.
Yeah, I was trained as a political scientist. You know, I went to graduate school in political science. I was a political science professor for a number of years. I had a theory around organizing young people, which is really around kind of connecting young people's voter behavior to hip hop culture at the time, which was nascent, and a recognition that, you know, every Tuesday in the record industry, an album would drop. We used to, back in the day, we used to stand in line at a Tower Records or a Virgin Records to like get the latest and greatest to come out. And the reason we did that was because an entire industry was set up to energize us around our favorite artist or music coming out. And I saw that, experienced that, and met a couple of leading industry folks. And I said, what if you turned this entire mechanism every given Tuesday to focus on the first Tuesday in November? What could that do to get the young people, 80 million young people, incredibly diverse population, connecting young urban youth to, that were largely Black and brown, to suburban white children who were like all vibing to the same thing? Like, what if you could bring together a coalition grounded in largely social justice energy that was very focused on freedom and rights and other things, granted, but brought them together in a way to usher in a new generation. And so I built from that work a kind of new political activism, along with a lot of other incredible leaders in the space, and led that work for a number of years. From there, I moved into bringing together a group of social scientists and neuroscientists together to understand how our brains operate around race and gender. This was at the time of the 2008 election of Barack Obama. He had just given his Philadelphia race speech, where a lot of people in America thought we were moving into a post-racial era. And there were a number of researchers who were worried that construct would take hold without actually the country itself, or all of us as citizens, doing the real work to make that possible. And so that was a very early entry of implicit bias, as we now know it, coming into the mainstream to help us, make meaning of what it would take to have the first Black president in the United States. And I built an institute called the Perception Institute with some of the leaders of those first organizers into this moment. And at the same time, I was on the board of Planned Parenthood. I just joined the board. I was leading the Perception Institute, and I had this young cultural organizing in my background. And, it kind of just danced and played with each of those things at all these different times. And the organization had a storied leader for a dozen years, Cecile Richards, who we lost last year. She had decided it was time for her to step down. We hired a new leader. And as a board, we went through a very long process and thought we had landed on the right leader. And it turns out, as sometimes happens, right, that the fit wasn't great. And so as she stepped down, I was asked to step in. And this was
on an interim basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. It was July 2019. And I remember my famous last words to the board when I stepped in were, I'll get you through 2020.
What could go wrong?
2020. And I just found myself leading a healthcare organization in the middle of COVID, as if a leadership transition wasn't enough. Mm-hmm. But then I was leading through COVID. I was leading through the racial reckoning that happened the following year. And then I found myself leading through the Dobbs decision, mm-hmm. and now Trump 2.0. Mm-hmm. So I think it felt accidental in many ways. And yet I kind of look back at the training that I had in these different silos that felt very different. And I actually feel like in some ways they all came together to create the set of skills that I need to lead through this moment.
So I've heard that you got the leadership advice, drive it like you stole it.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So it goes back to that interim year. I think I was probably operating a little bit like an interim leader. I thought my job was to come in and just make everything neat, fix it up, just like the perfect house guest.
For the next person.
Right? Mm-hmm. Like I had been around the organization for a long time. And so I took on the job of, I'm going to focus on operational efficiency here. I'm going to ensure that this leadership, gets stronger over here. I'm going to strengthen the relationships here so that whoever comes in is going to have a very easy ride so they can actually just go on and thrive and take us to the next level. And someone came up to me, a dear friend, she was a local CEO at the time, it was Lisa Gardner, and she said, it feels like you really are internalizing this leadership thing. And I said, yeah. I said, I kind of think I got the hang of this. And she's like, no, the interim side of the leadership thing. She's like, you are the CEO. And if you're going to be in the seat, you better drive it like you stole it. And it's like something unlocked in me. And it was like, yeah, I am this. Like, yes, I have to stop asking for so much permission. I have to stop, like when you say something and then you're like, oh, was that okay? Do you understand what I meant? You know, like you second guess yourself in a sentence. Was I clear? Did you get that? And she's like, you're just doing that in ways that are really undermining the real important work that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. So I've heard you say that hopelessness is a luxury. Mm-hmm. What is giving you hope right now?
Oh, my goodness. So I believe in movement hope. It's a little different than hope. I think people think that hope is happy, that it is like a feeling, it's a vibe. Movement hope is hard. Mm-hmm. Movement hope is, thinking about a woman who is getting in her car right now in Texas and she's driving, to New York City to get access to an abortion. And, I say hopelessness is a luxury because for her it is. Like, hope is actually what's fueling her. She's getting in a car. She is praying beyond measure that when she gets here, she's going to get the care that she needs, that, even if she doesn't have an appointment, she's going to be seen. It's an active resistance to make sure that those doors are still open, that she can walk through the protesters, that the provider is there, that they will be able to squeeze her in, that she may get some resources from an abortion fund that will help her stay. Like, there are a lot of layers, like literally an infrastructure of hope that has to sustain that journey for her. And, it certainly has felt like despair has been an easier choice in the last couple of years in particular, right? It's been the thing that kind of rises up to meet us when we're just looking at the news and we're like, I can't imagine, I got to turn it off. Like, that to me is a luxury because she doesn't have that luxury, right? She's worried about being criminalized. She could be undocumented. She is, probably taking care of younger children and her elders at the same time. And for us to not commit to building that hope infrastructure, which is, I think, the job of movement, I think is, is a bit of a luxury because, but for the grace of God, there go I, right? I mean, like any one of us could be in those positions depending on our circumstances. And right now we have built a country where, depending on who you are and what zip code you're born in, your life chances depend on what government option you got. And that's not good enough, right? And I think we have to have an actual real fight to ensure that we all get a national, durable, expansive right to reproductive freedom, because that's the only way that ensures that we all are free.
So let me switch gears a little bit. Something we ask anyone, regardless of what they do, and we've had some varied, from astronauts to comedians. How do you do it? How do you do your life, right? You have 2 daughters. You're going on the college tours. You have a husband. How do you manage your life?
Oh, my goodness. I would say the one kind of personality trait I would say is that, like, I'm a super hyper compartmentalizer. So I try to keep the compartments up. And that when I'm in a conversation, in an interview, I try to stay there. I'm not actually in my mind thinking about, did the food order arrive? Or did, my daughter arrive at her overnight on time? Even though sometimes those things try to filter in, I try to keep myself present in each one. And then I try on the other side, when I am home, to stay fully present so that I block off my time to be able to ensure when I'm in those conversations around their day or what they're thinking about, that I stay deeply engaged there and I don't let, oh God, I have one more thing to do, filter in. Mm-hmm. I would say that is probably 99% of how I do it. And then the other 1% is just having an incredible, amazing team that understands that that is my philosophy and that lets me do that. I think really being hyper communicative about what I need at any moment is actually, I think, the big balance that I've tried to strive for.
Mm-hmm. So you were on a different track when you met and got married.
Yes.
How has he taken this sort of, surprising turn, I guess?
He's been unbelievable. He's been incredibly proud. Like, every now and then I'll hear him on the, phone with his colleagues or his friends and be like, yeah, Alexis just got back and I can't believe what's happening. And I'm so proud of her and my warrior hero. And she's such a great model for the girls. And so I hear him and feel him championing me and doing everything. Can I get you a coffee? To I'm going to take the girls to school today, to the little things that I often don't see. Not too long ago, I came upon just a little spiral notebook in our bedroom that I thought was one of the girls, and I was about to give it back to her. So I opened it up to see who it belonged to, and it said, Daddy's math notebook. And my husband, MIT engineer, Wall Street finance hedge fund guy, had been working out new math problems so that he could teach himself before he worked with my at the time, 6th grader, as she transitioned to new math, which is for all of us, what on earth? And I just found that to be so endearing and sweet, like the ways in which, it's not like he's picking up the slack. He's just parenting, but it is a way that kind of makes me feel like I don't have to do everything all the time. And if dinner is not made or, the traditional roles that we often did fall into, he's got it. And I think that's been amazing.
Uh-huh. So your girls are 17, did you say?
17 and 14.
And 14. Okay, so when you started this, let's say 6 years ago, a little more, they were 11 and 8.
Yeah.
What did they think your job was?
I don't know at all. They knew mommy was getting on a plane a lot.
Uh-huh.
I mean, they understood because I had been on the board for almost 10 years. So they understood bodily autonomy very clearly.
Uh-huh.
One of them got her hair dyed and I was like, we don't do that in our house. And she was like, my hair, my choice, so they had all of the language. They were there young when they were marching, for in the post-Dobbs time, they've kind of lived a marching life as I did when I was young, I mean, I grew up in the post-civil rights era. My parents were kind of Black Power advocates. I remember being, in marches, my little Afro puffs and my rocking my dashiki and talking about freedom and power. And so in some ways, very much raising them in the same way. And I am kind of in awe of how much they are taking in and they're willing to engage with the current moment. They are very in tune with the world. And obviously I credit their father too, but you grew up in a house where you're talking about race and abortion and income inequality. Like you kind of get it at some point. Yeah.
So going back to when you were a young girl, you told us a little bit about your parents and marching and all of that. Do you recall what you wanted to be? What did you think you would do?
Oh my God. I wanted to be an astronaut.
Really?
I was fascinated by space. And I loved math and science. My older sister was an engineer. My father had studied engineering. My mother worked at AT&T. So I was always around a lot of really great thinkers and thinkers of color. And there was one moment and I remember this just like it was yesterday, where the late 80s, I was in high school and it was the fall of the Soviet Union and Condoleezza Rice was on air. As the Sovietologist explaining, making meaning of the moment. And it was this incredibly accomplished woman. It was like the first time I really saw myself, in terms of representation on air. And she was talking about something that was just beyond anything that I had known about. And one of my mother's closest friends was at the house and he said, "You remind me of Condoleezza Rice." And I was like, huh. And I kind of studied her and I was like, that's so interesting. 4 years later, I was graduating from undergraduate and I decided to pursue a career in political scientist and I was applying to graduate schools. Condoleezza Rice was the director of graduate studies at Stanford. And she called me personally to recruit me to the program after I applied. And I just fell into a just moment, fangirl moment of, I can't tell you what it means to me. It just all came racing out. I don't think she really even understood or appreciated how much of a model that she was for me in that time. And I talked about what her representation meant. And then we ended up talking about the program and I ended up not going there. But it was just kind of this full circle space for me to come back to kind of understanding that you can set your sights and you can find people who see and believe in you. And that was such a powerful moment for me.
Mm-hmm. So you went to Princeton. That was undergrad.
Yep.
Right? And then you got your master's from Yale, much to Condi's dismay.
Yes.
Okay, so then you started teaching. And I heard you had a bit of a Sasha Fierce moment.
Oh my God.
When you started teaching.
I did. So I started teaching. So my first name is Lori. L-O-R-I, and my middle name is Alexis. I had talked to my mom about it. I was like, at some point, Alexis was, always kind of in the ether of like, an identity that I inhabited at home, right? And it's
you
like
channeled Alexis.
Yeah, I always channeled Alexis a little
from bit. Dynasty?
Yeah, it was Alexis Carrington.
Goddess?
It was Alexis Carrington for sure. My mother would always say, "Oh God, that's Alexis speaking." And my first year of graduate school, I found myself being a TA, teaching a class, and I'd only been out of undergrad for 3 months. And I came into a classroom and a bunch of students sit around, and I was just nervous. I could feel my energy just literally radiating off of me. It was ironically, the person was like sitting right here to my right. And she just said, "Well, it takes me a long time to get to know people's names. Can we just introduce ourselves now while we're waiting for the professor to come in?" Right. And I'm sitting here like, oh my God, I'm the professor. And she's just like, I didn't want to interrupt her. And so everybody started to introduce themselves. And by the time it came back around to me, 15 people later, I was like, let me take control of this. I am the professor for this class. My name is Alexis McGill. And it just came out. And I became Alexis ever since.
And did you feel the vibe just change completely?
It was a vibe moment. Yes, it was a vibe moment.
Yours and theirs?
Yeah, because it was like definitely like it carried a different weight than like, "Hi, my name's Lori." And like there are lots of Loris out there that I know that are amazing, badass Loris. This was just a way for me to be like, I'm going to stand. I needed a way to like inhabit a space and own it. And being Alexis was just like, okay, you will recognize who I am. Yeah,
that is really good. I am Karen, which is quite a burden in the last 10 or so years, but this is what I got. Maybe I'll go with Lori or Alexis.
Yeah, come on over to the Alexis side. Exactly.
Okay, I'm going to have to really consider that. Alexis, I like saying that. Okay, it's time for our lightning round. So we have some fun questions for you. A few would you rathers. All I ask is that you just the first thing that pops into your head. Okay, just say whatever it is. Okay, would you rather be at the beach or the mountains?
Beach.
Okay, heels or flats?
Heels.
DC or New York City?
New York City.
Would you rather be moved or laugh uncontrollably?
Laugh uncontrollably.
All right, what's making you laugh right now in your life?
Oh, my kids.
Okay.
My kids are hilarious.
Okay. Yeah. All right, that's good. What's the best compliment you've ever received?
Oh, my goodness. Best compliment. Someone said I was too academic, and I think it was supposed to be a slight. And I was like, thank you very much.
Okay. What do you do to unwind?
I iron.
You iron. Okay.
I like, there's something about...
No, it's good. And I have heard that you love folding laundry.
I love folding, but
What do you love about it? For those who don't, maybe you could...
It is just the precision. It's like having a discrete project that you can start and you can finish, and it's clean. And I mean, everything. I iron my sheets. I do everything. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. I love stain removal too, but...
That's just for when you're really
That's just like
going.
Really excited.
Yeah. All right. We hear you were a cheerleader for many years.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite cheer or memory of cheerleading?
I started out, for those who remember the Pop Warner League, I started out as a mascot, just the baby junior cheerleader that would come out with the older girls. And then I worked my way up to be the captain of cheerleaders in high school. I would say defense pushing back. Sack that quarterback.
Okay, once you know it, you just never
keep going.
It. Yeah. Okay. Do you have a favorite quote or a song lyric?
My favorite quote is from Alice Walker. It's the title of the poem. Hope is a woman who lost her fear.
Excellent. All right. What books are on your nightstand or your Kindle?
Ooh, just finished one on vacation called I Who Have Never Known Men, which is this total crazy dystopian novel, which I won't spoil. Very thin book, but very good. And another dystopian novel, Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. So it should show you where my head is.
Okay. What's something you've changed your mind about in the last year?
Oh, that's such a good question. Cornel West always said, you should always be prepared to enter a conversation, being prepared to be changed by it. And I think I have been really changed by watching young people navigate in different ways than I have in the corporate space, which is to say, I was trained to come in, leave my full self at the door, and your whole self is not appropriate for work. Mm-hmm. And the next generations bring their entirely whole selves. Like, we were telling them to bring their whole selves, but they really bring their whole selves. And there's something...
We didn't mean it.
We didn't mean it. But there is something about watching the way in which they act and the way in which the next generations are demanding accountability from leaders that has moved my perception of, like, you're here to be an apprentice and then you get to change things when you lead, to this is really what the inclusion revolution is about, to how to bring their actual experience in right now.
All right, the last question in 2 parts. And it's, what's the best investment you ever made and the worst investment? And it could be any investment, doesn't need to be an investment. It could be a class. It could be a trip. It could be anything.
Okay. I would say my best investment is my crew. Like, my Sex and the City crew, like, it comes from all walks of life.
Who's the crew?
It is the crew. It is like,
who's Team Alexis?
Like, literally my Sex and the City crew, young women in our 20s who came up in New York City together. It is my big brothers from Wall Street, my big sisters, the color girls in the movement space. You know, I feel like I have a kitchen cabinet full of people that no matter what I do or what I need to think about, I have someone to call. It's like a powerful network that is invested in supporting the movement broadly, but also supporting me and being willing to call me out. And I know that it exists because we've spent a lot of time working it through, and they also know that they can call me. And if I got it, they got it. And that's just something hardcore about my crew. Mm-hmm. My worst investment? Mm-hmm. I was literally just talking about this with my husband. I was like, holding on to too much cash after COVID.
Okay, spoken like a Wall Streeter.
I am like, yeah, that was a bad move. But a lesson in caution.
Okay. Alexis, thank you so much for spending the time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for taking time to listen to our conversation on how she does it. Wishing you all a week filled with courage and determination. We'll have another great conversation for you soon. Until then, onward.